Hi, I'm Chris Gregoire. I have the privilege of serving as your governor. It's a job that I take very seriously. But I have another job. I'm also a mother. And this is why I especially appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I'm asking your help in protecting our state's children from abuse and neglect. All of us, every citizen in the state, must do all we can to keep children safe from harm. People who have close and frequent contact with children have an even greater responsibility. Most children have the good fortune of living in loving and caring families. However, some of our kids are not so fortunate. These children live in danger and they need our help. This video will help you know if you are required by law to report your suspicions of child abuse or neglect. It will also let you know how you can report, how you can make that life-saving phone call. Reporting child abuse or neglect is not an end, but a beginning. By reporting, we can take the first crucial step in getting kids the help they need. Many times, a phone call allows Washington's Child Protective Services to provide assistance to families so they can meet the needs of their children. In these cases, we not only save a child, but we keep a family together. In other cases, children must be removed from harmful situations. When a child's safety is threatened, the endangered child is the primary person we must serve. If you suspect that a child may be abused or neglected, please contact Child Protective Services or your local law enforcement agency. You can make a difference. You may save a life.
In the United States, the first documented legal response to child abuse was in 1874. With no other recourse available, a social worker concerned for the safety of an 8-year-old girl turned to the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals for help. The society prevailed, and so began the movement to protect children from abuse and neglect. Early in the 1900s, societies to protect children from abuse were formed in many states around the nation. Yet for the most part, child abuse and neglect were loosely defined with little knowledge of its devastating effects. In the early 1960s, a small group of physicians became convinced that the only way to break the pattern of indifference and misunderstanding was to mandate certain professionals to report. Leading the effort, Dr. C. Henry Kemp, president of the Academy of Pediatrics, held a conference on the battered child syndrome. Their work resulted in many states passing laws to protect children from physical harm. In 1974, the Federal Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act defined child abuse and neglect and set the standard for state mandatory reporting laws. Today, all states require reporting of suspected abuse and neglect by a broad range of professionals having contact with children and families. It is the intent of the law that persons who are in a position to identify children at risk will make a report so that the need for protective services can be assessed. Any person may, in good faith, report suspected child abuse or neglect, but those required to report include medical practitioners, meaning all licensed health service providers, including psychiatrists, psychologists, and dentists, professional school personnel, social services counselors and mental health therapists, coroners, medical examiners, and licensed pathologists, registered pharmacists, licensed or certified child care providers or their employees, juvenile probation officers, law enforcement, Department of Corrections employees who become aware of possible child abuse or neglect during the course of their employment, Department of Social and Health Services employees, any adult who resides with a child suspected to have been abused. All employees and volunteers of the Office of the Family and Children's Ombudsman, all supervisors of nonprofit and for-profit organizations, and all Hope Center personnel.
Hey, Shatasha, what do you have over there? Oh goodness, Sabrina, you're all wet. Why don't we go change that shirt?
If you are a mandated reporter of child abuse or neglect, and you have reasonable cause to believe that a child has been abused or neglected, you must report or cause a report to be made to the proper law enforcement agency or DSHS. Those who knowingly fail to make a report shall be guilty of a gross misdemeanor. The report shall be made at the first opportunity when there is a reasonable cause to believe that a child has suffered abuse or neglect. Although your place of employment may have a reporting protocol that assigns reporting responsibility to the principal or other administrator, this does not waive your responsibility to report suspected abuse or neglect. You still need to ensure a report has been made. The current child abuse reporting law in Washington State has been amended many times throughout the years. Its intent is to identify and protect children who are victims of child abuse and neglect. The law provides for investigations to determine if abuse has occurred and for services designed to protect and prevent further maltreatment. The purpose of the Washington State Child Abuse Reporting Law is to protect children who have been non-accidentally injured, sexually exploited, or deprived of the right to minimal nurture, health, and safety by their parent, custodian, or guardian. While the state respects the bond between parent or guardian and child, the state does assert the right to intervene for the general welfare of the child when there is a clear and present danger to the child's health, welfare, or safety. The state does not intend to interfere with reasonable parental discipline and child-rearing practices that do not injure the child.
So how are you doing?
Doing okay.
How's your stress level?
It's pretty high.
How are you doing?
I'm okay.
You're okay? How about Michelle?
Good.
On average, CPS in Washington State investigates more than 40,000 allegations of child abuse and neglect per year. There are several different types of child abuse. A physically abused child is one who has sustained non-accidental physical injury or injuries, such as bruises in an unusual area of the body, burns, fractures, bites, internal injuries, auditory, dental, ocular, or brain damage. Injuries sustained may be permanent or temporary. There is a wide range of sexual offenses in the Washington State Criminal Code involving children that constitute sexual abuse. These include indecent liberties, communication with a minor for immoral purposes, sexual exploitation of a minor, child molestation, sexual misconduct with a minor, and rape of a child. Child neglect is far and away the most frequent type of child maltreatment suffered by American children. Negligent treatment or maltreatment is an act or pattern of conduct that constitutes a clear and present danger to the child's health, welfare, or safety and must be reported. Chronic neglect has serious detrimental effects on children's cognitive development, social development, and the ability to form secure attachments with caregivers. Failure to seek medical treatment or exposing children to hazards can be considered neglectful.
Okay, Sabrina, let's go ahead and take this wet shirt off of you, okay?
Okay.
All right, lift up. Ups and daisies. Okay. All right, you okay? All right. Sabrina, what happened to your arms?
I don't know.
Does this hurt?
Yeah.
But you don't know what happened to your arm?
I don't know what happened.
Okay, all right.
Deciding whether or not to report suspected child abuse or neglect can be a difficult and confusing process, yet it is the most important first step toward protecting a child who might be in danger. A report does not necessarily constitute a proven fact. It is merely the raising of a question about the condition or state of a particular child. Reasonable suspicion based on objective evidence is all that is needed to report. That evidence may be your first-hand observation or statements made by a parent or child. Making a report can actually be the beginning of a process that can help parents learn to care and protect their own children. Local child protection authorities may differ with respect to the details they require to make a report.
CPS intake. This is Letty. How can I help you?
I'm calling to report a suspected child abuse case.
All right. And how are you connected to this situation?
I'm a family child care provider.
But there are certain elements of information that are almost universally included. Mandated reporters should provide their name to intake workers when filing the report. This will provide documentation that the mandated reporter has made a CPS report.
As the daycare provider, I'm going to need your name.
I would rather not give my name.
I understand your concern. Reporting anonymously does not meet the mandated reporting requirements, though.
My name is Cindy.
Cindy?
Cindy Robinson.
Thank you, Cindy. And what is your phone number?
Under most conditions, maintaining confidentiality is of minimal concern to mandated reporters because of their duty to report and potential liability for a failure to report. Although in most cases the reporter's name remains confidential, there are limits to this confidentiality. The intake worker will need as much information about the child as possible.
And the name of the child, please.
Her name is Sabrina Rowland.
And the date of birth?
At the very minimum, in order to conduct an investigation, CPS needs to be able to locate the child.
She lives at 201.
Information such as other children or adults in the home and the names and addresses of the child's parents is requested.
And the injury that you're reporting today?
When she arrived to my program, I noticed that she had a red bruise on her right cheek.
Information regarding the circumstances of abuse and the identity of the suspected perpetrator are almost always requested.
That she had bruises on both of her arms, as if somebody had grabbed her. The bruises were like finger imprints left on her arm. About a month ago, I noticed that she did have bruises.
It is helpful to include any other information about previous injuries or pertinent background data that might help the investigation. Mandated reporters should ask the intake worker for their name so the reporter can document whom they reported the abuse to.
And who am I speaking with?
Letty Leland.
Documenting the information contained in a report provides a record for the mandated reporter and makes it unnecessary to remember exactly what he or she said in their report. While the report is being made, the intake worker begins an assessment. The allegations and other pertinent information are reviewed. The CPS intake worker then determines if the allegation meets the legal definition of child abuse or neglect and the level of risk to the safety of the child. Based on this assessment, the case may be assigned for further investigation. The reporter may ask whether the report will be investigated and what the expected time frame is for screening and investigation.
And I will be sending it to the supervisor electronically for assignment. And a copy will also go to law enforcement. Someone will be in touch with you to gather more information. And I just want to remind you that each incident of abuse and neglect constitutes a new report. So be sure and call us if you see any other bruising or neglect to this child.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
If the report were an allegation of abuse by a non-caretaker or is a criminal act, the intake worker would refer the caller to the appropriate law enforcement agency or send a copy of the referral report to law enforcement, or both. Sometimes law enforcement requests assistance from CPS when they find children in an extremely dangerous situation, such as when a young child is found alone in an apartment or wandering down a street and the parents are unable to be located. Law enforcement may take a child into protective custody without a court order in emergent situations where there is a clear and present danger to a child's health, safety, and welfare.
And if you could send somebody over to my location, I'll hold on to them until you get here. Okay? Thanks.
So you think Stephen's being neglected. Tell me why you have those concerns.
I'm worried about Stephen and the condition of his home. He showed up to school very late today and was hungry. He said his mom and dad woke up late. He's also very dirty and said he couldn't take a bath because the water doesn't work.
Do you have any other concerns?
Well, I haven't known Stephen very long. His family recently moved to the school district. I spoke to one of his former teachers and she had similar concerns. She said he often came to school hungry and had hygiene problems. She also mentioned that he had problems with his teeth, but his parents never took him to the dentist.
Do you have any concerns about Steven's teeth?
I haven't heard him complain, but it looks like his teeth definitely could use some attention.
Have you spoken to his parents about this?
I've had very little contact with them. I've called and left messages, but they rarely return my phone calls. The few times I have spoken with them, I've arranged to have meetings, but they never seem to show up.
Okay, well, based on this report, I will send the referral to my supervisor for review. Would you like a follow-up phone call from the assigned CPS worker?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will mark that you request a call back. Thank you for your call.
Thank you. Goodbye.
The cumulative impact of chronic neglect over time from a pattern of abusive or neglectful treatment can harm a child's physical, mental, or emotional development.
Hey, Kevin. So what's up with this referral?
Well, I just got a call on Steven, and I checked the database, and appears to be a pattern of neglect here. There's 6 prior referrals in the last 2 years.
The long-term inability or unwillingness of a parent or caretaker to provide for a child poses a risk of imminent harm to a child and should be reported.
Is there anybody else in the home?
No, just the mom and 2 kids.
Okay, Jerry, can I get your concerns?
Well, all they eat is just junk food. They just drink pop, eat chips.
What about breakfast and lunch?
Every time I do my home visits, all I see are fast food containers.
The kids are being fed, so we are not able to go out and do an investigation at this time, even though the nutrition content isn't something that you would feed your kids. But the kids are being fed.
If the assessment doesn't meet the legal standard of child abuse or neglect, the child may be referred to DSHS or community-based services for assistance. These services might include the food bank, shelters, public health nurses, or the community services office.
Okay. I can certainly take down your concerns.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Cindy. This is Jeff Allen with Children's Services. I'm calling you regarding the referral that you made.
I'm glad you called.
I was wondering if I could come out and meet with Sabrina, probably within the next hour.
The children will be sleeping for about an hour, so if you come after that, that should be just fine.
That'll be great. I'll see you then. Thank you.
When a case of child abuse is accepted, it is referred to a CPS worker for investigation.
Hi, Jeff. I'm going out on that daycare case.
Okay.
Once a report has been filed, the law allows Child Protective Services access to all relevant records in the possession of mandated reporters and their employees. Child Protective Services and law enforcement are authorized by law and without parental permission to interview children wherever they are located and to photograph the child for the purpose of providing documentary evidence of a child's physical condition.
And I noticed that you have a bruise on the side of your cheek. Do you have any other bruises?
Mm-hmm.
Where would they be?
On my arm.
On your arm? Could you show them to me, please?
Mm-hmm.
If the abuse constitutes a criminal act, law enforcement will also be involved. The investigation is about determining the nature and extent of the abuse or neglect. Initially, the investigator will evaluate the child's condition, including their level of danger or need for medical attention. The investigation will include identifying the problems leading to or contributing to the abuse or neglect.
How is little Sabrina doing?
She's actually doing quite well, better than I expected.
In an effort to protect the child, the worker will evaluate parental or caretaker responses to the identified problems and their willingness to cooperate. Based on this evaluation, the CPS worker will determine an appropriate action to protect the child. The worker will take into consideration factors that greatly increase the likelihood of future abuse or neglect, including assessing the family strengths that serve to protect the child. All reasonable efforts are made to assure that the child is protected from further harm. Cases assigned to CPS are classified as emergent or non-emergent based on the allegation, the risk assessment, and the imminent danger to the child. Emergent means that a child is in imminent danger of being injured. Approximately 15 to 20% of all cases accepted for investigation are emergent. In these cases, the CPS social worker has 24 hours to respond, and the child may be placed in protective custody by law enforcement if the child's safety cannot be ensured. Within 72 hours, the social worker may return the child to the parents, secure a voluntary placement agreement from the parents, or file a dependency petition seeking a court ruling placing the child into the state's custody. Non-emergent cases are assigned to a CPS social worker who will respond within 72 hours of the report. Protective and other rehabilitative services for the prevention and treatment of child abuse or neglect are provided by DSHS without regard to income. In the most extreme cases, children are placed in out-of-home placement. This may be with a relative or a foster home. Every effort is made to provide services for family reunification. When there is little or no hope of reunification, parental rights may be terminated through the court. This allows the child to be free for adoption or other permanency planning. As with any social issue, child abuse and neglect is a problem for the entire community. The collaboration of many resources is required to protect children. By reporting your concerns to CPS, you are not only fulfilling your obligation as a mandated reporter, but you may be the first step in saving a child from further harm.